Hello and welcome to the MG podcast, streaming live on Monday, the 25th of January 2021. We're here to talk about MG electric cars, hoping to inform and maybe also entertain you a tad, hopefully. And this discussion topics coming up are we're going to give you some news from Michael and Miles, I think, about the BMS. We're probably going to chat about the MG5 roof rails, and we're going to talk about charging cables as well. I'm Stuart Wright, and joining me in this episode are MG EV owners, Michael Fisher.
Hi, my full name is Fish Dibby.
David Stewart.
Hi, Dave S.
New to the podcast, we've got Stuart Whitman.
Hi, I'm Stuart46.
And Innovation Development Manager at Chorley Group, Miles Roberts.
Hi, I'm miles per kilowatt hour on the forum.
Okay, so we'd like to get a little bit of diversity and opinion from female drivers. So if you are watching this and just happen accidentally to be female, or you know somebody who you would like to volunteer to join us on the podcast, we're not frightening. We're all nice people. And we'd love to get the opinion of a female driver or several on the podcast. So please get in touch with me. Send a private conversation to me, Stuart Wright, on mgevs.com. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notifications when we go live again. We're going to kick off with some questions. So, Michael, would you be able to have a look at the podcast thread? And
yep,
we've got some questions in there, haven't we?
Yes, and they are loading up. Right. Questions about the BMS. So one person saying, my dealer is insisting a certain VIN ranges require updates. I've found that sometimes it's locked to VIN numbers and whatever the computer system's saying. Miles, are you finding that as well? That it's locked to particular VINs?
It shouldn't be locked to particular VINs. It should be locked to vehicles that had the previous version of the software that was in from sort of October. So if they had a version of software that was installed after 24th of October, then it needs the update. If it was prior to that, then at the moment they're advising you don't need the update, or certainly you don't need a recall for the update. Basically, as we described last week, the problem is that a previous version of the battery management system was failing to calibrate the battery properly. It wasn't keeping the battery cells balanced throughout the range. Particularly as it lost charge, the battery became unstable in terms of battery voltages, and that meant that the range was reduced. It only affects certain vehicles that were effectively updated after the 24th of October. So if you took delivery of your car after 24th of October, because potentially the dealer might have updated it at that time, at PDI, or if you had a service done after 24th of October up until sort of Christmas, then it may be that the previous version of the battery software needs updating. So it won't be necessarily a VIN range, because it wasn't just cars that came, it wasn't just cars that were delivered on a certain time. It depends when they were in the workshop and had the software applied. Your dealer should be able to check online and see if the system will let them update the BMS if it's required. But if your car hasn't been into the garage after the 24th of October, it probably doesn't need the update at this stage.
VIN is vehicle identification number, is it? And
it is, yeah.
And where would I find that then, guys?
It's on the windscreen on the passenger side. If you look through from the front, between the bonnet and the windscreen wipers, on the passenger side, you'll see it there. It's also on a sticker inside the driver's door, where you get your sort of tire pressure sticker type thing. That on the door there, that's got a VIN number on there as well.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, and I take it you're not recommending people with the older BMSs to have the latest updates.
Certainly at this stage, obviously with us being in lockdown across most of the country and only essential journeys being made, it's not recommended that this would be classed as an essential service. It doesn't need, unless you've had that particularly faulty version of the BMS, you don't need this new version. If you happen to be booked in for a service or whatever anyway, then fair enough, but I wouldn't make a special trip to your dealer for the sake of it, unless it's had the previous faulty version.
Yeah. Also, another thing that I've actually personally suffered from, when going from the December 19 BMS to the latest one, the January 21, I'm calling it, what's happening is the charge controller isn't updating correctly, and the dealer isn't realizing it didn't update correctly, and then it's not charged and unlocked. You got 5 hours battery equalization, and the battery voltage isn't getting to that magic 455 number.
Right. Okay. So
I've seen one person who's messaged and says, "Yeah, my dealer caught it straight away." And
right. Okay. So yeah, when you update the BMS, there are other ECUs that also obviously talk to the BMS. So you've got the onboard charger ECU, is one of the critical ones, obviously for 240-volt charging at home. So there are a couple of other updates that need doing at the same time as the BMS, depending on when you last have you now had the Comfort 2 update done, Mike?
Yeah, I had it in June.
Right. Okay. So you had Comfort 2 done in June. So you would have had a BMS update in June, but you're saying you had the December version put in June?
It was there wasn't a BMS update. It came out in late July, the unlocked one.
Right. Okay.
But I had to have it reflashed during the Comfort 2 because it wasn't doing any time charging either originally.
Right. Okay.
Because I had my car early February.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was thinking when the versions of BMS were updated. Which, to be fair, we've had quite a few software updates.
Yeah.
Over since the car was launched, and obviously with lockdown things have sort of cycled through. Yeah. So so you had the December 19 BMS that was reflashed in June to the December version. Okay. Yeah. All I can say is, yeah, it should be checked when the car's on the laptop. Effectively, you sort of go into each ECU, you update it, and it'll. What the tech sees is that it'll update part 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 4 of 4, and then you've got to do a configuration update after you've written the new software as well, and then you've got to go into the next ECU. It's not just a case of update ping gone. It's not like in some ways it's a bit like trying to do manual updates on Windows. Sometimes if you don't tick all of the boxes, it fails somewhere further down because it needed to update part 2C on this one, and you've only got 2A or whatever, and you haven't, so that's why it can sometimes fail. So yeah, it just requires the tech to be vigilant and to make sure that everything's gone through properly. Because of the nature of the system, it is very easy to miss if it says it's had a fault on one of the things. You've got to read the screen in very small writing.
Yeah, because I think my tech missed mine, and I think he's missed it on different techs. Missed it on 2 other people's, and it's causing going from the December 19 straight to the new January 21. It looks like all the bad features of the previous 3 BMSs.
Brilliant. Okay, right. Okay, well, I mean, obviously, any issues like this, if you notice any issues straight away, take it back to the dealer, and then they can do a download to their MG's got a tech support helpline. They take data from the car, send it through the server, and then they can work out what potentially might be wrong. So rather than, obviously, if you see any of these issues, the quicker you can get it back to the dealer, and if they can get you a loan car or whatever in the meantime, so that you can leave it with them and sort it out. Because whilst we're talking on the subject of BMS, I've just had a customer who he had the previous version of the BMS was flashed to his car in December, and he works as an Uber driver, and so he was doing a lot of rapid charges every day, and that had a really detrimental effect because of the failure in the battery software to balance the cells properly, and doing a rapid charge doesn't really help balancing cells. It sort of just throws it all in really quickly. He was finding that his battery got really, really badly affected by the previous BMS update. He's now had the fix, but because his usage is that he still needs to do lots of rapid charges, the battery is not being balanced still, so it's still not coming up good. So I've said that basically he needs to take the garage to take the car back to the workshop and get them to effectively take the car off him for a few days, maybe swap cars or something, and just they do a balancing charge at 3 kilowatts or whatever to really sort that battery out, because him constantly doing rapid charges 2-3 times a day is not going to fix that car. It's going to make it worse.
Can't he just plug it into the granny charger when he gets home at night?
Well, he potentially could do, but his shifts are such that he lives in London, so I don't think he's got actually off-road parking outside his house. I think he's been reliant on rapid charge. So every time he's never done a balancing charge. So he's getting to sort of 90% and then cutting off. So it's never getting balanced, which, you could, in sort of theory, you could sort of say, oh, well, if you charge it to 90% on a rapid and then put it onto a slow charge, that might be okay. But with a balancing charge potentially taking sort of 6 hours or whatever, and him living in London, that's not going to be possible necessarily to leave it plugged in for 6 hours. So yeah, it's a car that needs sorting out really. But this is the problem. This is the reason why it's good that MG's taken the action it has, quickly, and it's been able to sort out this update quickly. There's just certain user cases where obviously it's going to take a bit more effort. I think none of us here knew much about battery balancing prior to this, and now it seems like we have in-depth conversations about it. But it's something that wasn't perhaps foreseen, but it's something that is fixable. It needs a certain battery conditioning charge, which takes obviously longer than a normal rapid charge. So
Yeah, my update from last week is that since I've been getting the red light on advising me to have a slow charge, that's happened 4 times this week, 3 times today. The balancing's taking 6-7 hours, which is, it's not really a hassle. I'm doing overnight, so it's an inconvenience, but it's not a hassle. But I've been in Frasers of Falkirk, and when things are
relax slightly,
just some kind of normality, I'll take it back down there and they'll have a look at it.
Okay. Okay. Are we good with the BMS situation?
How long does it take for the dealer to just apply it? Is it just within 2 hours, Miles?
Yeah, assuming it's just the BMS update that needs reflashing, it could be about 40 minutes. But if it's been a case where it needs a few updates, then it might be that it takes a bit longer, but hopefully about sort of 40 minutes to 2 hours max.
So I the other forum that I run is AV Forums, and we did a major upgrade on Thursday from 2.1 to 2.2. And it shows you the process of doing that update. So it goes through, we went through several different versions of the software as it upgraded. It went from, 2.2 alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the betas, and then eventually, into 2.1 and 2.2.2. When a dealer does this update to the car, does each update include all of the previous updates in a kind of cumulative way, or do the dealers have to do each individual update?
So the way that it works is that, for example, you can go from December 19 to January 21 without installing June 20, August 20, November 20. It just goes straight overwrites and writes with the newest version number. But as I was saying before, in terms of the updates, there might be like 4 packets for that update, and then there's a config file as well that goes on top of it as well, which then enables it all to work. So it's not just a case of I want this car to have all the latest updates. Go. You've got to select each ECU one at a time. You've got to do the download, and then you've got to do the config as well. So it's a manual process really.
Is this a big change in the way that mechanics work, or is this
they've been doing updates on the ECUs for since cars have had ECUs. There used to be one I know that was I want to say it was a Volvo, that it took about 12 hours to update because of the speed of their software and the number of ECUs. It was about 10 years ago, and it took about 12 hours to update the entire CAN network in the car, and you had to leave it overnight in the workshop and hope that the power didn't go off overnight. So it's, a lot of cars have got obviously a lot of ECUs. Electric cars are primarily electric ECUs, a lot more computers, but in terms of, is it different from, no, not really. There's less stuff to go wrong generally on an electric car. It's just that they aren't perhaps as used to seeing some of the issues as because the electric cars aren't as prevalent in the marketplace yet.
Okay. And when I say mechanics, I'm not insulting mechanics. It's because they're kind of software installation engineers as much as anything else.
Oh, sure. I mean, normally, to be fair, the ones that do the updates in MG will be the ones that are the highest qualified tech, the master techs, should we say, that are fully qualified, been there for years, do all the high voltage training courses and everything. They're certainly in Chorley Group, that's the ones that we they're the only ones that are allowed to do the updates on the cars. So
cool. We've got a question from Barrel there, Michael. Can you see that one? In the thread.
Oh, in the thread, right? Okay, let's bring up that one. Yes. Hang on, there's about multiple. There we go. I have an MG5 I picked up in January 21. I've read on the battery voltage on full charge should be 455. That's the ZS. I know straight away. But his register's at 395 volts. What is the volts on the MG5?
MG5 is about 395. Actually, I can try and remember. I've got one outside on the driveway. I can't remember. I've not been out to it for a few days. What with lockdown, it is about 400 volts. Is the battery on the MG5? I think 395 sounds familiar. Maybe 396. I'll see if I can dig up a photo I've taken at some point with it fully charged.
Harold says his range seems to drop pretty quick, even on short, low-speed journeys. Could this be the faulty update? Well, there's no faulty update on the MG5.
No faulty update for MG5, but what there is on electric cars, on all electric cars, is that, and they're all affected by this to different degrees, is that the first few miles of your journey will use, obviously this weather at the moment, you spend the first 10-15 minutes with the heaters on full whack de-icing the car, and then depending just how cold it is outside and what your battery level is, it may be that it automatically puts on the battery heater to try and warm the battery up, and if you've got, I say, high consumers on, like for example, your to give you an idea, my wife's got a Mercedes B-Class electric, and that if I drive that just to the supermarket, which is basically all I do at the moment, and back, it's a total distance of like 3.5 miles, but it could use sometimes maybe 12-15% of the battery, just because it's spending so much of its energy actually getting the car warm, getting the interior warm, warming up all the power electronics on the car. So obviously normally it does do, even in winter, if I was to do one constant journey, it would do say 65 miles or so. But when you're doing a short journey and you're doing multiple short journeys, in theory you could, based on that, you could run the battery down in the sake of, like 20 miles or something. So it's...
I noticed in one of the threads, Miles, earlier on in the week that somebody was saying that they can heat up the car whilst it's plugged in, so on charge. I didn't know you could do that.
You can turn the car on whilst it's charging. So whilst the car's charging, you can physically like go inside the car, press the button, and start heating the car. It saves a little bit, I guess. It depends if you've got. It might save you 1 or 2%. I tend to find that 10 minutes of running the heater in the MG5 uses about 2% of battery, which in theory is like 4 miles of range. But it's also, if it's so minuscule in terms of the actual cost, you might as well. And as long as assuming nobody's doing 200-mile round trips at the moment, I wouldn't bother. I'd just turn it on and take the cable out, and then I'd have to get out and unlock it again and take the cable out again. later.
That's one thing I'm so impressed with, how quickly it does all demist when you are. When
Oh,
you
it gets really, yeah, it gets hot
very
really fast, yeah.
And that was just whoever on the thread said we were all moaning about our cars. We still love our cars dearly.
Okay, well,
One
Michael.
question: which is the quickest to balance the battery back? Whether to use the fast 7 kilowatt charger, or granny charger, or a zappy set to 1.4 kilowatts?
The slower you charge the car, generally the least efficient the charging rate. So if you were to charge on a 3-pin plug, that typically would be slightly less efficient than doing it on a 7 kilowatt charger. Okay, because there's a longer period of time for it to charge, which means that there's more heat dissipated over a longer period of time. So, but we're talking about percentages. Really,
getting the battery back to its 455 volts.
It'll balance at 7 kilowatts.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it doesn't actually balance at 7 kilowatts, because it'll charge at 7 kilowatts till it gets to 99%, and then it automatically, the car limits the charge. So I was seeing it was charging at 300 watts whilst it was balancing on the charger. So it automatically turns the charge rate all the way down to 0.3 of a kilowatt. So it doesn't matter at that point whether you're on a Zappy or what you're on, a 3-pin plug or whatever. It's doing 300 watts. It's the car's controlling it, not the charger at that point. So it really makes no odds, as long as it's an AC charge and not a DC charge. That's why I say no rapid charging.
Okay, so charge it at 7 kilowatts, get it up to full percentage, and then let it equalize that way. Okay, cool.
Great stuff. Okay, thank you, Miles. At this point, I want to talk to Stuart, who's new to the podcast, our first MG5 owner who's joined us. Stuart, when did you take delivery, and can you tell us about your journey to owning the MG5?
Yeah, for sure. I took delivery on the 29th of December. I was kind of in between the lockdowns, I think. I was one of the last ones to pick up a car from the dealer. I ordered it in November, but getting there, it was purely a financial decision. Fed up with paying Mercedes service costs. Post-lockdown, I had an E-Class Mercedes estate. Needed an estate for my work because I carry a lot of gear, and I've got 4 dogs when I sort of have leisure time as well. So I really wanted an estate. I was looking at EVs, but they were too expensive to sort of just enter the market. And then I was just watching YouTube, and there was a YouTube show, I can't remember which one it was, that it previewed the 5, and it was like, wow, I didn't even know about this. I hadn't seen it advertised. And that was on a Monday. And on the Monday night, I downloaded the brochure, which then you give your email address and a phone number. And I got a phone call on the Tuesday. Had a chat with the dealer on the Tuesday lunchtime. Test drove the car Tuesday afternoon, and then within about 3 or 4 days decided to order it. And then I took delivery of it, as I said, 29th of December. I believe it was a business that was going to have that particular model, that car, but they'd gone pop in between, so I was freed up for this car apparently. So I got mine a bit early, and I'm really happy with it. It's a bit strange not filling things up with diesel or petrol anymore, but certainly what sold it to me was the new car, electric, so greener, cheaper, and also 7-year warranty. You can't pass on that. I was actually telling friends about it, still wondering why I was selling it to them, and then just thought it was a no-brainer really. In addition to that, my wife volunteers for the NHS, so she got an affinity discount as well, which actually helped with the purchase of the car. So after the first week of lumps and bumps, just trying to get used to it, I think we're up and running now. I didn't have a charger until the middle of January as well, so we were granny charging until then. But things have settled down a lot since we've got the home charger. So yeah.
Okay. Where did you buy it from, Stuart?
Southampton, Richmond, Southampton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you leave your
very
feedback
good
for them on the dealer's map?
Probably not. No, but I
Okay.
will. Is that, yeah? Okay, I'll make a note of that. But yeah, it was mainly done over the phone, obviously, because of the situation. It was a bit strange. You know, it was almost like handing over in a lay-by because they're on a busy road kind of thing. So we were just in a parking space. But you know, good service, all done through the kind of the windscreen of my old car because I PX'd mine. And then basically not quite the handover that I've been used to over the years, but we're in strange times, aren't we? Managed to get used to it, but yeah, it was almost like, well, there you go, and off you go, kind of thing. So I did, but before I bought it, I did have it for about an hour. So I took it for a drive, and I was quite impressed with it then as well. So it wasn't a purchase without driving it. I noticed on a thread earlier that somebody was reluctant to place an order because they hadn't driven it. But to be perfectly honest, I'm quite impressed with it.
So compared to the Mercedes, what's the build quality like, Stuart?
Actually better than I expected. On the video that I watched initially, one of the lines was, put aside your prejudices. I've always kind of, for the last 10 years, had different models of Mercedes, and I was really reluctant to leave the brand because I just kind of love the cars, but thought it was just time to let go. And I thought the build quality was going to be one of those things that wasn't going to sell it to me, but actually it's functional, it's comfortable, the seats are more comfortable than I expected. And I don't know, it just, there's a lot, it's the simplicity of it in a way makes it easier to drive, if that makes sense. No, I'm impressed with the build quality, I must admit. The paint, I went for the red paint, which I think is a tri-coat paint or something. I paid a bit more for, and you know, even that in the rain, it's got this guard over it or whatever it is. You know, I like the colour. I think the paintwork, the body, everything apart from the tailgate and pushing the button to lift it up, you know, and I have to do it manually, which isn't really a problem. So, you know, yeah, as compared to the Mercedes, yes, it's a different car. And even, you know, when I spoke to the dealer, he said it's not a Mercedes, you know, it is what it is. If it was a Mercedes, it would be 50, 60K, wouldn't it? Not the price that it is. So simple as that. It's just getting my head around the function. Now, you know, it's the functionality. I see it as a bit of a tool rather than a luxury, and I've got my head around that, and I'm quite happy with that.
And you've had it
Yeah,
just
I'm
shy of a
same
month.
as you.
Sorry?
You've had it just shy of a month.
Just shy of a month, but because of my work, and my wife also volunteers for the NHS as a first responder, and she's actually currently doing some shifts doing the dispatching at the control centre. We still have racked up about 1,100 miles in that time, so enough time to be able to kind of work out how, you know, she charges it for free up there as well. They've got about 20 charging points at the control centre. I worked out on a kind of fag packet, working out, back of a fag packet, working out that I think the car's kind of worked out at 83 to the gallon. If I was like adding how much we spent on it versus how much it would have been in fuel, about 83 to the gallon. And that includes some rapid charging that wasn't rapid. You know, we paid for type 2 because I didn't realise you could plug the big plug into the socket. So therefore we hung around at a services for 45 minutes, hoping to go back to the car for a full charge, and it put 20 miles on it, which really wasn't. And it wasn't until we did some Googling at the services we realised what we'd done, which resulted in us turning round to go home, and ended up in a service station with 4%, ready to get onto a CCS charger that wasn't working.
Oh.
So yeah, so we ended up having to charge it on another 22 kilowatt, I think it was, and then take it to another place where there was a CCS. So we learned it in about 3 or 4 hours. What probably most people learn in about 3 or 4 weeks, I think. So, but we sussed it out now.
People
Thankfully.
Fire there.
Sorry, Miles.
Proper baptism of fire then.
Yeah, definitely. It was like that curve was pretty much vertical. But, again, wasn't prepared really. I just went for it feet first rather than doing the research. But
you sound about as technically blessed as I am, Stuart.
Yeah.
So that's why I find the forum and the podcast really helpful, that you do learn quickly.
I was like driving down the M3 with 6% on the battery. The services never seemed so far away. We turned the radio off. We'd taken our phones out of the charger. I was even frightened to indicate to go into the services just in case it drained the battery and I wouldn't get to the charger. And it was a cold and icy night that particular night. It was actually New Year's Eve. And unfortunately, we had an essential journey that we didn't get to. But that was the downside of it. But as it happens, looking back, everything was fine. And we didn't. I was amazed at 4%. I was thinking it was going to start to shut down at 4%, but yeah, never again. It won't happen again. So good planning.
That's the only good thing about lockdown. You don't have to listen to me going on and on and on about rural chargers not working. I can't go anywhere.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. So yeah, we're happy with it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I did a similar sort of thing when I got my first electric car. I just, went out on a journey without thinking about it, and ended having to drive home with switching off the AC at night and all this kind of stuff. And then at least it sounds like you've got a sympathetic wife. Mine was like, what's this all about?
She was brilliant, and she's really she really likes it. She likes the smoothness, obviously. Even with an automatic, previously you still recognize the gear changes, and well, she didn't, but I do. But she, again, wasn't worried about it, and she was the one on Google, unplugged from the car on her phone, working out what was going on. And she's the one that said, "No, you put the big one in there." And as I did, you get obviously the 50 kilowatts, and then it's really refreshing to actually see the range go up as you're sat in the car watching, and only costing about, I don't know, $5 or whatever it was to get home. So and also having the charger at home, obviously that's paid to most of that. Most of the journeys that I do through work, and I travel all over the south of England, will be within range, especially in the summer. I've got my first proper work trip out of area tomorrow, and that's a 140-mile round trip. So I already know which chargers on the way home I might need to stop at. So
there is something very disconcerting when the mileage goes in the range and you're just left with those 3 straight lines. You're thinking, oh my God.
Yeah.
I've quickly learned as well that you obviously don't drive it from 100% to 0% either. So it isn't really a true 100%, is it? And the GOM, which I didn't know what it stood for until I found out, realised, and I just keep looking at the percentages really. Kind of even on shorter journeys, even in the cold a couple of weeks ago, it seemed to be about every 1 mile, no, 2 miles was 1%, something like that, and that was on freezing cold mornings, which is doable really, so not really a problem.
Okay, well, thank you, Stuart. I mean, it's excellent to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I mean, maybe there's room next to you for your wife to sit there and join in, maybe.
She probably would. Yeah, she probably would. But
excellent.
yeah, she's actually dispatching people at the moment tonight, but she may well be next week.
That would be really good. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. I'll see what she can do.
Okay. Well, shall we bounce back to Michael to see if there's any questions?
Yeah. So, if you got older versions of the BMS, not the faulty November one, should I go to the dealers immediately, or should I hold off for another reason like servicing or punch a tire, etc., etc.?
Well, as I said, I mean, I wouldn't class it as an essential journey to get your BMS updated. If your car is currently working, just having the latest version of software isn't going to suddenly make your car do 100 more miles or be any better or whatever. It's it's something, you know, very, very small that you may notice with a certain functionality. It's not anything major. If you don't mind the fact that you can't lock your car whilst it's charging, for example, you have to lock the car to charge it, sorry. And if that's not been an issue for the last 12 months, then I wouldn't certainly go in the middle of a pandemic to book into the dealers to get a software update that realistically isn't life changing. So my yeah, sorry to sound like Boris, but yeah, stay at home, control the virus, save the NHS is pretty much where I'd go with that.
Again, Miles, if I can ask a real daft laddie question, if I'm not getting a true balancing on each of the long charging sessions, I'm not doing any irreparable damage to my battery, am I? Or
No. So battery balancing is normally battery balancing would take it would only happen when the battery's full that you'd be witnessing, and it would be that it would take, say, half an hour to an hour at the end of the charge. It would turn the charge rate right down and just make sure that all of the battery cells are even. And what's happened with this previous version, and as you're using the vehicle, the BMS's job is to make sure that all of them discharge at the same levels. They're all keeping within the same sort of voltage range as they discharge as well. So what you don't want is one of, you know, half the battery to be doing all the work and the other half to still be, you know, higher voltage or whatever. So in terms of what the actions are, the software update that you had, David, I think was the one from October. So that was, so the issue yours has is that it's not keeping the balance as the battery drops. So what you're finding is that one or two cells are getting out of range. Now it should, in theory, balance when it gets full. So I would always recommend that everyone does at least once a week, puts it on a charger and get on a AC charger and get it charged up, which it sounds like you're doing anyway, David. But if you run the battery right down, so if say you get down to the point where it's warning you need to charge, like 20% ish, you know, if you get into that sort of level regularly, then with the previous version of software, the November software, it would cause balancing issues and the cells would be quite a long way out of range at that point. And it gets to the point where perhaps the battery would say that it's got 20% left, but it wouldn't actually let you use that 20% because the cells would go too far out of voltage range. And it might just suddenly sort of pack up on you and say, you know, it needs charging straight away. It might limit your power and so on. So in that case, I would say that you'd be justified to go get that software update done. But if you haven't had the update after the 24th of October, if you haven't got that version that's not working correctly, then I wouldn't see any point in updating until you go for a service time. When you go for your annual service with MG, they will apply the latest versions of the software that are applicable to your vehicle. I wouldn't be making any special journeys and spending an hour sat waiting in a car showroom or in a waiting area or whatever for the software update now. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I'll do a question. This is from Kokijo on the forum, who asked, do MG have a customer feedback process or perhaps a working group including customers to gain user feedback and help improve future products? This is your project, isn't it, David?
Yeah, well, I had my Santa list, which was we pulled together, I think it was about 58 items. Mike Proctor's not on, so he had about 100 himself. But yeah, I copied that onto an Excel spreadsheet and sent it down to Miles. But yeah, that was something that occurred to me at one stage. You know, how much do they invite comment back, and what's useful? I suppose inundating them with feedback's counterproductive. But certainly, there's one or two folk on some of the threads say that they would be quite happy to provide feedback. As yeah.
I mean, to give you some sort of confidence on this, the Comfort 2 update that was launched was basically on the back of customer feedback from people like myself and Mike Proctor. And I put a wish list together in January 20. I sent a list through to MG and said, these are all the things that we think could be done better. And about half those things were resolved with the Comfort 2 update, which came out in June, July. So it would have been quicker than that had they not had lockdown in the middle. Both in China, they were in lockdown sort of January, February, March, and then we were in lockdown March, April, May into June. So but they do take the feedback on board and they do work on it. And so, yeah, if it's something, particularly if it's a quick win, that can be done with software, then that's something that they will look at doing as soon as they can. If it's something that's more involved, like for example, some of the things on the Santa list were things like, we'd want height adjustable seat belts in the front or whatever. Obviously, that's not something that can be changed on this version of the car, but it's something that can be talked about for future versions. It just depends how far they are through the process with the next version of the car, obviously, because we may see a car in next year that was already designed and stamped and already the jigs are already there and everything ready to build it. It's just so it's too late to add them at that point, obviously.
Yeah. But what I'll maybe do, Stuart, is keep the Santa thread open, look at what's coming in, and maybe once every 2 months or so, Miles, drop you an update of what's there. But yeah, I think the other thing when I did the Santa list, I was really mindful. Yeah, and the other Stuarts commented on it already today. Yeah, you can have everything in your car, but the price is at that price because of what you've got in your car. But yeah, and I was just going to reply to Stuart. Yeah, I've had 4 Seats over the last 10 years, and I moved not warily, but I'm thinking I know the build quality of VW, Audi is great, and this won't be as good. And I am so surprised how good it is.
Yeah, it's the expectation level, isn't it? I think mine was lowered, but too low, really, to be perfectly honest, and pleasantly surprised. I was expecting like stone hard plastics, but and what are they anyway? They're just surfaces, aren't they? Yeah, of course, if you're going to hit your head on them, it's going to hurt. But they're not that hard, and also even things like in the 5, I don't know about yours, but in the where you rest your arm on the door, on the inside of the door, I was expecting that to be kind of hard, but it's not. It's comfortable. It's actually more comfortable than the Merc that I just got rid of. So again, comfortable. And the steering wheel, I was expecting a kind of a harder feel on the steering wheel, but it is pleasantly surprised. Just one of the best options that you never see on a Mercedes, or one of the best things you never see on a Mercedes, is telling you that your wheels aren't straight as well, which comes up with a little message to say your wheels aren't straight. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, it's like quite amazed at little messages like that you get.
You've had that message already?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the MG5, if you turn the car on and if you've parked the car and the wheels are not straight to the car, when you start the car up, it warns you that your wheels aren't straight in the space, so you don't sort of go set off straight back. If your steering wheel looks straight but it's actually on full lock, it actually warns you that your wheels aren't straight.
Yeah, there's the things that it does have that you'd never even think it would have, kind of thing. They're quite surprising, really. But I know people talk about the bongs. That seems to be a bit of an issue with some people, but don't seem to get that many. Yeah,
so the bong noises was that was pre-Comfort 2 on the MGZS.
Right.
The MG5s effectively incorporated those updates anyway, so
right.
They were fixed at launch.
Yeah, no. Again, just impressed really for what you get. It's value for money, I think, and that probably exceeds value for money. I think, even though the price of the car is is a lot more expensive than an ICE car, but you're paying for the tech, aren't you? You're paying for the battery and everything else, and you have to kind of weigh it all up, don't you? And I just, to be perfectly honest, again, it's just one of those, wanted to be in an EV, so it's my route into it, if you like. And already my wife's already looking forward to the 2-seater that might be coming out.
Yeah, we hope that might have some news on that later in the year, hopefully.
Right, yeah, so she's already got her eye on that.
Stuart, did you have any intention of, or do you have any intention of using the roof rails?
Right, so this came in between me ordering and me having it delivered. I did make a call to the dealer a couple of days before when it surfaced on the forum. It's not something that I use that much. However, maybe a trip down to Devon with a roof box on would be affected. And I think what I've found since I've taken the EV on is you are restricted, but there are get arounds. You know, like one of the things that I found is we live on a peninsula, so you drive home and then you might go back out again. You know, just in the evening, not now under current lockdown rules, but of an evening you might come home, have dinner, then go out in the evening and go visiting. I'll charge it while I'm eating dinner or whatever. Or you might have to go to a rapid charge. And the same as the roof rails. How often, you know, I've had roof rails on all of my cars and I've very rarely used them. So for me, it wasn't an issue. So it's not a selling issue. When I spoke to the dealer about it, he just said, well, you know, you either can choose to have your deposit back and not have the car, or you can have it. And it's just one of those. And what we decided to do, that if we did need a roof box on roof rails because we were doing a trip, probably from the money that we've saved, we could probably just hire or borrow a car anyway. So it's not really a big deal. You could make a big deal out of it, but it's not like we've got, we're not having to have the use of a roof box. But a bit surprising. I washed the car on Friday actually and had a wobble of the rails. And you instantly think, oh, I wonder if they are stable or not, because they do wobble.
Well, just to sort of set cat among the pigeons, prior to all this happening, and this being known, when our first demonstrator came in September, MG5, I took the MG5 on holiday with my wife, 2 kids, dog, roof box with about 50 kilos of stuff in it.
Yeah.
Completely full, a big like 520 litre roof box on the top, on some roof bars that were not genuine MG ones. They were just some, you know, ones that we got a couple of years ago from Lidl or whatever, 30 quid. And none of it fell off. And actually, we said it felt, actually, there was less wind noise in that than there was in the ZS EV when you have the roof box on. But then obviously it turns out that MG hasn't got the certification for it to be in the UK. So so what we basically what we're waiting for is for MG to get a certification to say it can hold X kilos on the roof. And we think that it will, we think it's going to be 35 kilos, but we're waiting for confirmation. It's got to go through all the different tests and things. I can say that I've probably had more than 35 kilos on, nothing came off, but obviously in the event of any accidents, it's obviously, you know, it wouldn't stand up in court very well if I said, oh, I'll put 100 kilos on the roof, it didn't fall off. Well, it might do next time. So
that was my concern was, you know, as a purchaser that was about to buy it, my concern was if I was to use it and something fell off on the motorway and wiped out a whole load of traffic, then it'd be my fault for using it. You know, but you know, ironically, the demo that I had, I actually made a comment about the roof bars going across the rails because they were quite noisy. And I said to the guy that was selling the car, I said, "Oh, you know, other than the roof bar, the roof bars," and he said, "Well, yeah, we're actually keeping them on the car because we're selling them as an accessory." So it's quite ironic that the negative I had about the noise was actually, it wasn't ever going to be a thing anyway, currently anyway. So yeah, so to answer your question, don't really have a use for it anyway, Stuart, so it doesn't really bother me, but I can see how it could. If you're a family of 4, a bit like Miles really, going down to the West Country or wherever on holiday, wherever you go, with a whole load, you probably wouldn't make that trip now, would you?
no, I'd probably use the ZS EV instead because that's rated 75 kilos. So
there you go. Yeah.
I started some polls to gauge what people think about this. I'm displaying one of them now. It was somewhat scientifically designed by someone who does research and uses a lot of statistics. So I don't know, because I just didn't want to say from my gut feeling, oh, well, people, because I've had an Audi Avant A4 and didn't even know that you could use those roof rails. They were just something that was on the car. Shows how much of a motorist I am, I guess. So I just figured, well, that doesn't really matter if they're only decorative, except for their waste of weight and cost. But So anyway, you know, the polls perhaps give an indication of what just a few people think, and if anybody's in the market for or has bought an MG5 and you have an opinion on it, then I invite you to vote in these 3 polls, because it'd be useful just to see what other people think, I think.
What is it with the Row E5 in China then? Do they have them and then just don't use roof rails anyway? Presumably.
I honestly don't know. The EI5 that's sold in China is sold with roof bars on the higher spec model. Whether they use them or not, I don't know.
No.
My Chinese is fairly poor, so I haven't been able to sort of do any digging online. I don't know. I don't know is the answer.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I could help you with that, Miles. Talk to you later about it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I guess that's the latest on the MG5. I thought it was a bit premature of Les Burrows to contact the media about it before MG have come back with an official answer, but I can understand how he'd be frustrated if MG UK perhaps haven't been as forthcoming and helpful to their customers as they might have been. But you know, that's the way it goes. Hopefully it'll be good news.
It seemed a bit, you know, as from a consumer perspective, a bit underhand. But then if you don't know, you don't know, do you? But you do expect your dealership, you know, the network to know what they're selling, I guess. But you know, if you're acting on information, if you're being told or being advised or encouraged to sell accessories that go on these rails, then you're not to blame, are you? And it's the bigger picture. If people can't see that, then you know, you can understand their frustration.
In terms of, from our point of view, we were going with the information that was provided by MG. So we were told originally they'd take 50 kilos.
Absolutely.
That was on the spec sheet, and then all of the accessory photos with, you know, roof bars and cycle carriers and things on there. And then it came as, yeah, obviously that's the basis on which I went on holiday with my roof box and everything on there. And then when the car was sort of final customer deliveries come through, and they said, oh, by the way, we've just found out that we haven't got certification for the roof bars, and so we're going to have to say that they're for decorative use only because we don't, you know, they're not certified. And we don't know how long the certification process is going to take. So for now, we're saying there's, you know, it's 0 rated. But it's, as I say, you know, they are working on a fix. They are going through the certification process. They are going through the testing process to get them certified. Effectively, at some point, it's been a human error. It's been someone has assumed that we've got the sheet for it for sale in Europe, and we don't. That's basically, you know, what's happened there. But it's frustrating for us that obviously we were all geared up one way, and then we were told we had to change tack. But it's hopefully being resolved soon. Anyway, I hope to have an answer for you very soon as to what the final answer is.
Okay, maybe even in the podcast next week.
Fingers crossed. Tune
in at 7:30 a week tonight, folks. Okay, so the last topic of discussion tonight then is charging cables. So is the MG5 the same as the ZS in that it comes with a granny charger but no Type 2 cable?
That's correct. Yeah, from the factory it comes with just the granny charger. In fact, it comes with a little zip-up carry case on the MG5, which is one up on the ZS EV. On the ZS
and
EV,
it fits in nicely into a little pocket in the boot as well. Mine did come with a charger, but I paid £187 for it, or whatever it was, 178.
Yeah, well, this is the granny lead that comes with the car. So you see at one end you've got your Type 2 connection with 7 pins, and then you've got a 3-pin domestic socket on the other. So that's what we call the granny cable. That's 4 meters long from plug to plug. So that's what I was using for charging on a temporary basis until my home charge was installed. And that'll charge at a range of about sort of 6 miles every hour that it's plugged in. Pretty much, it's probably about 6 miles for 6 to 8 miles an hour charge rate, effectively. So if you're doing quite a bit of journey in your MG5, Stuart, I guess that you were perhaps not necessarily getting to a full car the next morning.
No, luckily, from our escapades on New Year's Eve, we didn't do much driving in between sort of New Year and probably the first week of the working week, if you like, and managed to just get CCS charged. You know, got it to 80%, and then just left it on sort of trickle charge overnight, which seemed to just get us by. Thankfully, I didn't have any long journeys. And like I say, we had a 7 kilowatt fitted a couple of weeks ago, and it's been plain sailing since then, really.
Which one did you go for, Stuart?
Went with what the dealer recommended, which was Rolex. It's quite interesting because I never knew. I just assumed, again, through not doing research, that when you see these adverts advertising for £450, and the big brands like the Shells and the BPs and everybody else advertising within 4 weeks, when I placed the order for the car, I quickly realised that obviously all of these fitters are busy, and the lead time was 8. I think BP was 8 to 12 weeks, and I managed to get in touch with Rolex, and that was, as I said, middle of Jan, and that was probably about 6 weeks after I ordered it. And the price was pretty reasonable. I went with another company, and they were happy to do it, a different charger, Pod Point maybe, and it was about getting on for £1,000, but they could have done it 2 days' time. But it didn't need an earthing rod. It was something that didn't need an earthing rod anyway. And unfortunately for us, our consumer unit is in the middle of the house, so there's quite a lot of cable to run out. It's not outside the house. A really good service, came when they said, tidied up, went through it. The app associated with it, I don't know if any of you have it, but I'm quite pleased with it. The only thing I had was it didn't have on the options. Is it EV something that's connected to Rolex, the app? It's EV Energy. Have any of you got that?
I've got a different sort of charger, but go on. Yeah.
Yeah, so EV Energy, and they didn't have my tariff with my energy company, you know, and so it's quite impressive as well. You can contact them, they email back really quickly. So I was quite impressed with that. And like I say, plain sailing ever since, really. I've only had one day where it didn't charge fully, which was a day that I needed it as well. So unfortunately, it only went up to, I started the day on, I think, 87%, and I did need to do a sort of plug in on a CCS on the way back for some reason. I don't know why, but it hasn't done that since. I wouldn't know why, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've got a wall box through Scotch Power, and they wouldn't actually install the wall box until I had the car. They refused to put it in until they could actually check that it would make a full connection with the car. And even though I said, listen, I'm prepared to take the risk, because I actually got the wall box within about 10 days. And the car was about two months at that stage. But they were great. They said, no, we just can't do it. They turned up in a mutually convenient time. But yeah, I thought that was quite an interesting angle for them to take.
It's a massive market, isn't it? You know, I guess they're all, you know, the guy that installed mine said they're all just really busy, because obviously everybody just wants them, don't they? They need them. So
Yeah, there's so many electric cars being sold at the moment, and so many, and obviously with lockdown as well, it's putting a lot of installs back by, you know, a few months as well. So that was a thing we were really working up against in the summer, was that, you know, people are getting the cars delivered finally when we came out of lockdown, but the charging companies hadn't installed any chargers at all between sort of March and August, really, you know. So it was causing some fairly big headaches for people. The only other, I was going to say, the other cable, obviously, that you don't get with the car as standard, but that's recommended, is to go for a Type 2 cable. So that's one that's got an end that looks exactly the same as the charging cable that plugs into the car, and then it's got another end which plugs into the female-male version of that Type 2, and plugs into your sockets that you find on charging in public car parks, at workplaces often, and I'd recommend that people do get that if they're planning on doing journeys where they're going out and about away from their house on a day-to-day basis, I would say if you're going to be using more than say 50% of the battery on a regular basis, I would recommend that you take one of these Type 2 charging leads, because it's if you end up suddenly getting a call and saying, look, can you go a little bit further out? Can you go do this? It might be that that extra 7 kilowatts is what you need to get by.
Yeah.
There's no cool way of putting away the Type 2.
Oh, there is.
Is there?
David, that is an excellent question, because almost as if you've been primed for that.
Well, I am astounded.
Yeah.
Every week you astound me, Miles, but I am now officially astounded.
So I'm just trialing a product at the moment, which the company that we buy our charging cables from, our Type 2 charging leads that we supply, in the dealership. So they got this new product that come from the Netherlands, and did I want to try it? So I've got this, which is, you see that, the EV reel.
Oh, I need one.
So what this does, so it's basically like a hose pipe connector sort of thing, but you've got, so you just take your cable off it. Then
What they've done there is they've reinvented the wheel, haven't they?
yeah, and then you set your charging cable out somehow.
Oh, that is
I do
brilliant.
my left hand. Sorry, I'm not looking at what I'm doing, and it simply comes out.
I rest my case. There is no cool way.
It simply comes out. There we go. It comes out. So the idea is that this stores in the boot. So it's got a base, and that velcros. I don't know if you can see that. It's got a velcro underneath. That velcros to your car boot. So you get that in your boot, and then when you round the cable up, that just sits inside like that, nice and neat at the side of your boot. Yeah, so that's just sort of stuck up to the side, whatever. But then when you want to use it, you take the cable out, and you'll go to the charger, and you'll take your cable out of the charger, and you'll plug it into here. Then, really not made for doing on webcams, is it? And you just wind it up like that. You don't get your hands soaked. And then the cable sits in the top there, so it doesn't move, and then that just goes back into its base.
Any idea of a recommended selling price yet for that, Miles?
The recommended selling price is £75, including VAT.
Shut up.
It's quite a decent hard bit of kit. It's quite nice. That.
Brilliant.
Oh,
Just stick with it on the front footwell.
Is that? Do you get?
I
Is the,
take it.
go on. You're going to ask the same question as me. The
yeah,
cable come with it as well.
Yeah, does the lead come with it? And if it does, how long is it? If it doesn't, how long a lead does it support?
Right. Okay. Well, it doesn't come with the cable, so £75 is just for the holder.
Right.
Right. Okay. Our cable. The cable is. I mean, this cable is actually the one off my wife's Merc, which is why it's bright yellow. And this is a thicker cable than normal because this is 3-phase. Because Mercedes does 3-phase Type 2 charging, so it's thicker than normal one you get on MG. This is a 5-meter cable, and as you can see, there's plenty of space left. Well, you can see there's plenty of space left. So I think it's designed to take up to a 10-meter charging lead. So that'd suit most people, I think. But it's I say it keeps it tidy in the boot. Stop. If you've got the problem I've got with cables generally is that they get absolutely soaked through when it's raining or covered in snow like it was the other day, and then for me, I tend to start wear a suit for work and stuff. So if I'm going out to the car to gravel the cable back up, you go and you're trying to coil it around. Your hand's getting filthy from all the stuff it's picked up off the floor and so on. And you're getting this wet cable and you're trying to sort of, fight with it to get it round and into the boot in some sort of semblance of order. And then is it just, sort of spread all across your boot floor? Is it, is it soaking everything else that you want to put in there? Have you got shopping that's stacking on top of it and then you can't get to it? So yeah, I do this. It keeps it in a nice coiled up thing. But I got it I got it on Friday. So I've not really used it in anger yet, hence why I'm a bit sort of crap about demonstrating it. But
no, it looks good.
With slightly more practice, I think it'll be very good. Oh, it's also got, this is a nice little thing. This slot on the back here is for you to put your RFID cards. If you've got one that you use regularly at a certain place, you can use that as a storage place for RFID cards.
I saw that. I watched
There's
the
a
video.
job for you in QVC or something like that, Miles.
I was gonna say, actually, my phone just lit up from QVC. They just, they want me to start demonstrating cheap jewelry.
One thing that I like about the 5, I don't know if it's the same with yours, is you plug in from the front. So you're driving in.
Yeah.
Is that the same on the ZS?
Same on the ZS, yeah. And
Yeah.
I find that a lot better because, to give you an example, the wife's Mercedes, it's on the rear, like where the fuel filler would be, on the rear quarter. And so sometimes you'll pull into a space. I don't have a problem with reversing into parking spaces. It's fine. Everyone's got cameras and sensors and everything. It's fine. But sometimes my charger will be over there, but the plug's over there. So it's I've got to go a cable that's sticking out that side, then going around the back of the car, and then into a post behind. So it's sort of like almost tightens across your boot. So I think that having it on the front gives you a bit more options in terms of charger location. You can sometimes, there can be 3 spaces in front of a charger that your lead will reach from.
Yeah. Another one with the charging cable was on our first trip out on our horrendous journey was, so you spent £180 on this cable, you're plugging it into the car, and then we're going shopping because we went into a shop. What if someone steals the £180 cable? No, because of the lack of handover, obviously if your car's locked, so's the cable. You just think, oh yeah, don't know. We got back, we were quite happy, even though we just had 20 miles put on the car in 45 minutes.
Yeah,
the cable was still there. But obviously we found that out when I was trying to pull it out before we got in the car, and I'd not unlocked the car. So therefore there I was tugging at this car, trying to pull this plug out, realizing, hang on a moment, this is probably locked to it. And so clearly it is, but there you go. All these things we find out as we go along our journey.
I have a real fear that my non-techie dweeb status has just been stolen away from me.
Oh yeah, I think I've got that.
The other thing, I've only been on one really long car journey with luggage, and I remember somebody had put in one of the threads, if you're filling your car boot full of luggage, take the charger cable out and just have it somewhere in the passenger compartment. And it's a brilliant idea because we've got 5 or 6 suitcases and things like that. It's a real hassle to take them all out to find the charger cable that you require. So that's my top tip of the week. If you are going away with lots of stuff in the boot, take the charger cable out and put it in the back.
I made that mistake in the MG. I had I had a whole lot of stuff in the back, and I also had the dog in its crate in the boot as well. And so when it was chucking it down with rain, I'm there trying to lift this poor dog out onto the car park so that I can then get the charging cable out to them. Not popular.
Say that as far as the solution for storing the Type 2 cable, my car came with just a fabric bag, and that's sorry about that. Is it? No. When I took the photo inside my car, which is a Hyundai Ioniq, that bag's actually on the back seat there, and it's a real mess because when I had finished charging it last time, you're supposed to just kind of loop it up and put it neatly in the bag, and it was just like you
just end up fighting with it, don't you? And the cable coils a certain way, and if you try and go against that coil, it's horrendous trying to sort of get them to lie the way you want it to be. I think the more frustrated you get with it, the worse it gets, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think as well, for me, I don't know whether the MG have missed a trick, but when you lift the bonnet, and obviously there's a sheet of plastic with a few filler caps, whether there would be any space within the void to store a cable.
Yeah, to be fair, on the MG5 there is quite a large amount of space under that plastic cover.
Massive amount. And all it needs is a
frunk.
Yeah.
A front trunk. Yeah, I suppose that, my wife used to have a Jaguar I-Pace, and that had a frunk. Only quite small. You could fit she used to keep screen wash and stuff in there, but that was literally, we never used it for anything else. It was because sometimes I think you're just not used to sort of leaning over the front of your car, putting something, unless you've had a Porsche before, you're not really going to be sort of thinking about it even. So I honestly, to be fair, I I don't even miss not having a front trunk, because I think that I'm just so not used to having one anyway, that I say even when we had one for 18 months or whatever, we never used it because we just forgot it was there. So
Okay. We have a question. It's the last one from the podcast thread from Kokijo again. He's asking, does pressing the P on the ZS engage an additional parking lock, transmission lock, like on a conventional automatic gearbox? Or is there only the parking brake holding the car when parked?
Yes, I don't know actually. Actually, I'm trying to think. I think I do know this, but I can't remember if I'm. The trouble is that I work across so many different brands. I'm trying to remember which one's right. On the ZS EV, when you press the P button, it automatically puts the parking brake on the rear for you anyway, as soon as you press P. So it's whatever it's doing, it's belt and braces anyway. But as far as I'm aware, it actually uses a magnet lock on the thing. So it's not actually a put on Nissan Leaf and a lot of other electric cars. They have like a pawl that goes into the cogs and locks them and stops them moving, like a transmission lock. Which is what it has on the Ioniq. It's what has the Nissan Leaf, and it's basically a bolt that goes in and stops the gears moving. On the ZS EV, I think it just uses the magnetic. I think it just locks the coils in place. I think. I'll double check. I can't. I honestly, I don't think it has a pawl. I don't think it has a pawl. I think it does something with the magnets, but don't know for sure. So I'll try and find out for you.
Okay, thanks, Miles. Michael, do you want to cover any questions that we've had tonight?
Yes, one from Jake. Are there any 7 kilowatt extension leads offered by cable retailers or by MG?
There are some 7 kilowatt extensions that you can buy online. They're not, strictly speaking, to the specifications that are set out in the type. Basically, the charging specifications are you're not supposed to use any sort of adapters or extensions or things. Every time that you connect a couple of these plugs together, you're introducing another place where perhaps moisture or whatever can get in, and also they're not going to lock to each other. So, and if you try, you can't just do it with normal. You can't just buy a normal cable and tag it on, because they don't actually reach. The pins inside won't mesh. The data connection pins, so they are actually slightly shorter, and they won't physically touch. You've got the, using my fingers here a bit too much, but you've got your main pins, which for your voltage and everything like that, and they mesh together. But then these little ones here, these are charging protocol pins, and they don't actually meet up, and that's deliberate to stop you from daisy chaining the cables together. So it is possible to get an extension. I've seen extensions for sale, but they're not, strictly speaking, approved by manufacturers or by charger installers and things, because they're not to code.
Cool. And the last one, does the ZS EV need soundproofing under the bonnet?
I've not had any major problems with the ZS EV being too noisy or anything like that. I mean, you get some road noise through from, depending on what surface you're traveling on, you get a bit of road noise through the arches, I think, from things. I mean, some people, it depends how attuned you are to certain frequencies, I think. Some people do, as a matter of course, like to sound deaden everything on their cars, and buy additional soundproofing and things like that. I've never bothered. It's never been anything that's bothered me. Mind you, my rather checkered car history involves some cars which made a lot of noise. So, including like, Lada Nivas, Zastava Yugos, Alfa Romeos, and all sorts. So, yeah, I've probably gone part deaf, to be fair, because of all those crap cars I've had in the past.
And this one more to David and myself. Have we noticed any build issues with the car, like side knocking noises, or the driving mat lug coming loose, or the front camera not operating warning notice? In terms of the front camera not operating notice, I do notice it on a cold, damp morning when there's a lot of condensation, but when you have the aircon go in after 5 minutes, it clears up and it's working fine.
Yeah. Build quality, no, everything is as I would have expected, as I say, from having Seats before, which I thought was a really good build. No, the build quality is fine. No, I would say the one thing, and it's, God, this is how petty you can be. The parcel shelf, I think, is poor, but how often are you
Oh
using
yeah, the little plastic bits on the side. Yeah, mine snapped off. It's the parcel shelf's in the garage.
Yeah.
It's not used.
But I rarely use the parcel shelf. But any times I've had to take it out, I've thought, a couple of quid more. This could have been a more substantial, and I think it could possibly have been soundproofed as well. But God, if that's your biggest worry about the car, then happy days.
Pretty minor, isn't it? Yeah. Is that it? Is that it for questions?
Just low winter sun blinds the camera as well, and the automatic cruise control disengage. But yeah, I've seen someone shine a torch at the camera and it will disengage, or shine it in my eyes, and that will I would stop the car if that happens.
Okay. All right. Well, what time is it? Oh, 8:45. Okay, so we're a little bit over time anyway. We try and aim these to be about an hour. So I'm going to wind it up there. So that's it for the MG EVs podcast this week. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to, yes, hit the like button. Do it now, please. I'm going to wait for
Don't
you.
hit it twice though.
No, don't hit it twice for luck. That'll undo it. And if you'd like to comment on what you've heard today, please reply in the discussion thread. I'll put a link to it in the video description. Oh no, there already is a link to it in the video description, I think. It'll be there shortly. It just leaves me to say thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming along and sharing your expertise tonight. Thank you, Michael Fisher. Thanks to David Stewart.
Stay safe, everyone.
Newbie, but not so newbie, Stuart Whitman.
Thank you. See you later.
And from Chorley Group, Miles Roberts.
Hey guys.
We'll be back on it's the 1st of February now at the usual time of 7:30 p.m. So I hope you can join us then for more riveting and hilarious content from the MG EVs podcast. I'm Stuart Wright. Thank you very much for joining us. Cheerio.